This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show featuring conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and outdoor hospitality experts who share their insights to help your business succeed. Hosted by Brian Searl, the founder and CEO of Insider Perks, and powered by insights from Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Super excited to be here for our fourth week episode talking about the RV industry, outdoor rec, all kinds of cool things like that. Welcoming back one of our special guests. Eleanore is here. The rest of our special guests are missing in action and clearly not as devoted as Eleanore is to this entire cause here. So no Phil's going to be missing. Hopefully Susan and Carpenter will be able to join us a little bit later. But super excited to have three special guests, two of which have audio working. So hopefully we'll get Aaron back here, who now has disappeared from camera, but we're excited to talk to him. Mark, it's 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia. Thanks for joining us, Mark. We're going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves in a second. And then Andrea or Andrea? Which one?
Andrea.
Andrea, okay. Is going to talk to us about boating and some of the things that are happening in her industry from an outdoor recreation area. And hopefully I won't be blurred throughout the whole show, but maybe that's better for our audience, like we talked about before. So I really need to build a studio here, Eleanore. Can RVDA fund that for me?
Not this year.
All right, not this year, but maybe not. Okay, I like the not this year. That's interesting. Okay. So Eleanore, you want to introduce yourself first? Talk a little bit about who you are and.
Sure. My name's Eleanore Hamm. I'm president of the RV Dealers Association of Canada, and we're a federal and regional. We're Federation of Provincial and Regional Associations across Canada. We represent the RV dealers from BC all the way to Atlantic Canada. A lot of the things that our association looks at are topics that are national in scope. So, you'd have an RVDA of BC that would look at provincial issues, but we work closely with the federal government. Our strategic goals basically fall into education and training, government relations, industry intelligence, which is statistics and marketing, as well as member benefits. We represent almost 400 dealers across the country. The majority of RV dealers are members of our association.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here as always, Eleanore. Mark, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark from Earth Cruiser in Australia. We manufacture high-end four-wheel drive off-road motorhomes that are built for off-grid. We manufacture in one area here, but we manufacture the entire vehicle from fiberglass right through to final assembly, manufacturing many of the parts in-house. Very little do we go outside for. Yeah, that's us.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Mike. Excited to learn more about what you guys have to offer. Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Pierantozzi with the Recreational Boating Association of Washington, or RBAW for short. I sit on the board as VP of Government Affairs, transitioned from our administration position a couple years ago. So we are focused on the state of Washington to represent all recreational boaters, of which there's about 250,000 registered in the state right now. So we represent them for state issues, regional, local, even get involved in some federal things related to how they boat in the state of Washington, what's accessible to them, how their tax dollars are used, and to advocate, proactively on things that voters would want, or reactively on things that maybe we feel aren't the best for recreational boaters in our state. So we're kind of self-titled the voice of voters in Olympia, and so represent everybody to make sure they get to boat the way they want and have access to the waters that they want to be in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. We'll let Aaron introduce himself if he gets back on here in a second. For now, we'll just kind of skip over him and hope he gets his mic issues and things like that fixed. So let's start with boating, right? Because this is an interesting topic. We never really discussed this. on the show before, because for all the people who watched us, right, we're more focused on camping and RVing and outdoor hospitality and obviously the RV industry and things like that, right? Trying to make a concerted effort more to tie some of this stuff together, because it is all related. You see people who have RVs pulling into campgrounds who are towing their boats behind them or dropping them off at a marina nearby, or, you know, wanting to stay at an RV park that's closer to a lake that has a boat ramp versus the other side or farther away, right? So I think all of this has synergy. We were talking about this briefly before the show, you know, just about the boating. Like, not everybody who goes boating is going to go RVing. Not everybody who goes RVing is going to go boating, but there's a lot of synergy and cross development kind of between the industry and love of outdoors, right? Is that fair? And I think what most interests me first is kind of just exploring a little bit more about your role, because I don't think, you know, when I came into the campground industry, it was hard for me to kind of, and it's silly when you look at like Eleanor's been doing this for so many years, right? But it was kind of hard for me to believe there's an organization that's dedicated to standing up for all the rights of people, for the dealers in Eleanor's case, right? And like, obviously, like, now that you think about it and you learn about it, like, that's a no-brainer that is necessary and it needs to be there, right? So what do you do for the boaters? Because I assume it's more complex than the boaters just coming to you and complaining they can't like have open containers, and then you legislate lobby for that, right?
Yeah, very true. So in my understanding, RBAW in the state of Washington is really only one of 3 in the United States. So there's
Okay.
a much larger representation in California, RBCA, I think it is, Recreational Boaters of Canada. I'm sorry, Canada. Canada on the brain, California. And I believe there's one in Maine or Vermont. But outside of that, we're not aware of any big organizations like this. So we take our work pretty seriously. We're a 60-year-old organization. Started in the 1950s. There was a bunch of passionate boaters that loved going to a place called Susha Island. And you can see British Columbia from Susha Island. It's just an amazing place. You can only get there by water. And they were going to sell part of it to private developers, so nobody could go there unless they owned a cabin. So this group of passionate boaters got together, raised $50,000, a lot of money back then, and bought it and donated it to the state of Washington to keep it as a marine park in perpetuity. So everybody would have access to it. So that's kind of how RBAW started, with boaters that felt like, you know, we pay taxes every year to put a little tab on our boat, and they wanted influence over how that, you know, boater generated money was spent in the state. So fast forward to now, we feel like we represent, you know, with advocacy, how those tax dollars are spent, how much taxes they're getting from boaters. As a little side note, in the state of Washington, recreational boaters are the only vehicle that pays an annual percentage-based excise tax, and the state determines how much your boat is worth. RVs don't pay the same, airplanes don't pay the same. So in our state, boaters are a little bit more passionate because they know they're the only ones, right, that pay this money. So we want to make sure if there's marinas and marine parks that they remain. We don't want anything to go out of business, because in the state of Washington, and maybe United States and Canada might be the same, they're not building any new marinas anymore. From an ecological perspective, it's just impossible.
Aaron, your little audio is bad there. Okay. So I don't want to give you a hard time the whole time, Andrea, but I just want to ask about the specific tax thing real quick.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Is it because Eleanore is better at lobbying than you that you guys have to pay the taxes and the RVs don't? Or?
Yeah. You know, years ago, there was a person who got into office in the state of Washington that had this grandiose plan of giving, you know, having everybody pay $20 for a car tab. And as he went through and started reworking those tax laws, things got a little out of control. And everybody got theirs reduced, with the exception of boaters. And everybody knows once a tax is in place, it's really hard to repeal it. So what we've done right now with those taxes, and I should have looked this number up before I joined. I want to say it's, let's call it 5 to 6 million a year from boaters. We have allocated over 30% of those collected taxes to boating programs. prior to RBAW's involvement, those were just going into the general fund in our state, could be spent on anything. So we've had some success, and we continue to chip away at that. Actually, in the upcoming legislative session, which starts in January, we'll be working on other plans to get more of that money allocated to boaters.
So what are some of the priorities like that you're working on now from a boating perspective? I mean, for those of us that come out from outside the industry, like I've been on boats, I know people who own boats, right? But I haven't thought about the issues that are facing boaters. What are those that come?
So number one, I'd say would be equitable treatment in the tax laws, which we just kind of talked about. So we're always watching to make sure they don't want to increase those taxes. So that's the first protective measure. Outside of that, and I guess I'd put regulations in that. There was a potential regulation coming our way a couple of years ago where essentially before you got on your boat, you would have to have a life jacket on and have that on during your entire boat ride. Now, that may make sense as I say it out loud, right?
But why do you need to regulate that?
Yeah. So there's like a civil liberty safety balance there that just to make sure that there sometimes are unintended consequences to rules that come out of our state capital, Olympia, maybe everybody's state or provincial capital. And so we just want to make sure we're that voice in Olympia. Unintended consequences is usually how we start the conversation. If nobody's going to enforce it, why would you want to put something like that out there and distract from things?
Because it's good PR.
Yeah, right. There you go. Outside of that, the paper cuts from the legislative side, it's really access to boating grounds and services. So for example, BC has amazing provincial parks. We have marine parks in Washington. We want more people to get access to those, get outside and grow boating. So we watch when buoys are out of service for long periods of time and people bought their pass, they go to Susha or any other marine park and they can't get access to a buoy because they're out of service. So we kind of try to keep them on tabs of making sure they're maintaining everything with those tax dollars, as well as just having access to other boating grounds, boat ramps. Of those 250,000 boats I said were registered in Washington, over 80% are trailerable, meaning that you would take them out of your backyard or a storage facility, go to a boat ramp and launch them in the water. That's a lot of boats, and that's a lot of people that are keeping their recreational dollars in our state. So we want to make sure they have, opportunities to spend that money.
I think this whole thing is fascinating, and maybe not as many people who are watching the show are as big of a geek as me and like to dive into the weeds of things. But I think it's just fascinating learning about how much effort goes into the simple things that so many people enjoy on a daily basis. From your lobbying to Eleanor's lobbying to everybody else, to Australia, to everywhere, right? It's fascinating, like how many of these things would be more headaches or less headaches or not safe or unsafe if it wasn't for organizations. Like you don't think about it, right? You just go out and you enjoy the boat and you don't realize.
Yeah.
Probably why you should have more members, and Eleanor should have, well, Eleanor's got almost everybody, but more members. We need more than 400, Eleanor. But yeah, it's some of that stuff just fascinates me to learn about. So, I think I'd be interested to learn it. And if any of you three have questions, I know we'll get to you in a second. And Aaron, I want to let you introduce yourself before. Sorry, didn't get a chance to yet. But I'm interested, if any of you three have questions, please feel free to pop in. Just because we haven't talked about the boating industry, how did you guys fare over like COVID? Did you see a surge in people like we did in RV who were trying to get outside and purchase boats, or like how did that impact you?
Yeah, for boating, there was a huge surge in purchases of boats, right? We called it social distancing Puget Sound style, where you just jumped in your boat and took off, right? And went somewhere. Unfortunately, we couldn't go to Canada for a while, but there were plenty of places in Washington to boat. That's really coming down. It came down almost like a cliff. And I just saw the numbers a couple weeks ago, and I think boat purchase numbers are coming back now to where they were in 2019, so pre-COVID. So big burst. You couldn't find a marina slip anywhere in Washington. Then there was this cliff, I think, when folks realized that boats are expensive to maintain. And then it just
sounds familiar, Eleanore, by the way.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to our industry. We had the COVID bubble. And then obviously when things opened up, people could recreate in other ways, maybe, go boating in the US and take planes. That we saw 2023 was very soft. I mean, we also had some availability issues in 2022 at the end of just getting product to our dealers. And we're still soft, but we anticipate, we think by 2025, the cycle will start to go back up.
Interesting.
I think not only being the economy being a little soft, I think we also have the added difficulty that there's a glut of both boats and RVs on the market, where the purchases were sort of inflated through COVID. And now, as you said, the maintenance and everything else starts to kick in, and they want to sell it. And the problem is now we've got a soft market, and we've got excess stock of secondhand vehicles or boats on the market. That's what we're seeing here anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say that's what we've kind of heard over here, right? As a narrative, Eleanore?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of pre-owned product on the market, whether it's being sold at a dealership or privately. People have decided either RVing wasn't for them, or, they've tried it for a while and they want to go and do something else. So, that's definitely impacting new unit sales as well.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in if you don't mind. Again, sorry I missed the entry.
Introduce yourself, please, real quick, and then you can jump in.
I'm Aaron Pfadt. I'm the owner and founder of Off-Highway Van based in Salt Lake City. We're a Class B manufacturer, primarily building on Mercedes chassis. So all van-based RVs. And I started in 2016 prior to the COVID as a sort of a lifestyle hobby business, like a lot of van builders got into it. And so, we rode through the COVID period where anybody who could build a van could sell something. And, we're seeing the same trends that both you, Mark, and Andrea in the boating and Eleanore are talking about. The market is soft right now. And we talked about it maybe for us bottoming in December or so. And I think it's still kind of dropping through the summer and is kind of floating at the low point right now. We're hoping it kind of ramps back up. And, and there is, the industry in Class Bs in particular, I think are down 40% or something like that year over year right now. And we're beating that, but we're in a pretty specific little niche, small volume manufacturer, less than 100 units a year. And, but the softness in the market coupled with that inventory that you were talking about, Mark, is really the key to it. Our vans are in the, 200 to 250, price range, and there's just used stuff on the market that's below 100 or floating around 100, and that's it's a compelling case for somebody who's just getting into the RV space or specifically the Class B space.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us a little bit about you. What's your company do? I mean, I know, but tell them, right?
Yeah. So again, we have our quick elevator pitches. We make 3 models of van, 3 floor plans in 2 different lengths. So we build models. We started as a full custom builder, like most small Class B van builders did, but it's not a particularly scalable business model. So we have been in a transition post-COVID to a model based, and the differentiator for off-highway van is that our sales are fully D2C, so we do not use a dealer network, whereas a lot of my competitors that started similarly, Outside Van and some of the others that have started small and have grown up, have really embraced the dealer network. We're sticking with the D2C concept, and it works for us. And I think it's, the ceiling is still pretty high even in that, because the ground has been laid by, manufacturers like Tesla, really breaking the mold of big dollar purchases, going, buy it, see it at a showroom potentially, and then have it delivered to your house. And certainly the outdoor industry is familiar with it. Bicycles, Canyon and YT, and a bunch of those bike manufacturers have gone full D2C. And so that's the model that we're embracing, and we're scaling and growing with it. And, and then our particular segment within the Class B is sort of the higher end of things. A Winnebago Revel is in the 180s. Storyteller hovers in the starting in the 190s up to the 240 range, and we're a little bit above even Storyteller in terms of where our product fits. So yeah, kind of our high end niche seems to be good. We're certainly up in 24. We're up pretty significantly, 25-30%, which compared to the trend of being down 40 is pretty significant. So our company's doing well. We're outperforming, and but it's a lot of work post COVID. There's some hurdles.
So how did you get started? How did off-highway vans get started in the beginning? What problem were you trying to solve in the industry?
Yeah. So my background is I do a lot of mountain biking, a lot of motocross riding, and so I spent a lot of time camping in the desert. I had a previous business and sold it, and ended up with some time on my hands, and so it was practically living in the desert in the back of my Suburban, and riding my motorcycle with my dog and sometimes my wife, and you run into a bunch of different solutions for being in the desert, being in the outdoors. And a friend of mine came to me and was like, "Hey, I know you're an engineer and you've got this background, and would you build me a van?" And so I jumped into that, and I had obviously, as an entrepreneur, a long time entrepreneur, I'd seen the opportunity there. So I jumped in with a small team, was set to engineer, which is a little different than most builders. Ended up being sort of more like custom home builders, things like finish carpenters, things like that could do the finishing work inside of a van. And I came back more from a automotive background. I was an automotive engineer for 10 years in Detroit. And so I bring some, like professional level engineering into this, into the design. And, I kind of got lucky. I was in a right size, scalable position when COVID hit, and that allowed me to ramp up, and I don't know, made some okay decisions to not expand too fast and get out of control. And then post COVID, had stuff in place to be able to survive the downturn, and and reevaluate what the business looks like in the post COVID world. And yeah, it's been very good. So yeah, engineer, enthusiast, outdoor enthusiast, and and love the design aspect of it. I'm a designer at heart. If my comfortable spot is to sit down in front of the CAD terminal and drop a new design or shake out a new floor plan, and and then order some parts. So I love it. And we do all of our manufacturing right here in Salt Lake. It's just a great city with a great manufacturing base, and yeah, we're trucking along and looking to the future.
So if I'm a consumer, and this is kind of my last big question, and if any of our other guests have questions for you, please feel free to ask. My last question, I think, is if I'm a consumer and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, like we've talked about this glut on the market of a bunch of used vehicles. There's a bunch of new vehicles. Obviously, the manufacturers are coming out with new models that are latest and greatest with technology, new floor plans and things like that, right? If I'm coming to you and I'm saying, like, I'm not sure really what I want to buy, I'm looking at used vehicles, I'm looking at new vehicles, why is off-highway vans the best? What makes you different?
Yeah, our value proposition is really, we kind of call it internally the 4 W's. Warranty is first. We offer the longest warranty. We offer a 5-year warranty on our Class Bs, and that's pretty unique. And that is allowed because of our build quality, because of our designs, and our stability in production and manufacturing quality control. My auto engineering background. Lightweight. So the second W is weight. We use a lot of aluminum. I've built a lot of race cars, and I appreciate that. And the reality of Mercedes chassis is their gross vehicle weight rating is pretty low. And so a lot of these builders just throw everything in there, including the kitchen sink, right? And so that really pushes the boundary of the GVW of that. And so ours are about 1,000 pounds lighter than a comparable model from any other manufacturer. And so that's 1,000 pounds more gear that you can haul. And so that's number 2. Number 3 is wait time. We are, I'll call it a semi-custom builder. So we use our 3 floor plans on 2 different lengths of chassis. And so you're not a 6 to 8 month lead time of a full custom builder. And so you can have a configured build in 2 to 4 months from us. And you choose one of our floor plans, you pick the colors, you pick the fabric, you pick the, some of the interior. Oh, you want to choose this particular seating feature or a different seating feature, and it's built to your spec within that 2 to 4 month time frame. So the wait time isn't there. And and then that's the final W is what you want. And so you get that customization with that short lead time. So those are our 4 value propositions. And then with the direct to consumer, it gives you the ability to contact us from anywhere in the country, and you can fly in and visit us, or we'll send the van to you when we're done with it.
Awesome. Mark, I think you're in kind of a similar situation, right? With some of the you manufacture?
Yeah, so we manufacture, as I said, 4-wheel drive remote vehicles, and we manufacture from end to end. So we start off, obviously, with the design process. We have about 5 in-house engineers. We are lightweight manufacturers. I've done that all my career. We've been manufacturing Earth Cruisers Earth Cruiser Australia's been around 15 years. Just recently, we brought all of the composites in-house. So originally, the composite cell of the house unit was manufactured using a layup technique, which is pretty much standard across the industry. We now infuse everything, where we actually put them into built molds. We dry stack everything, and we draw the resin through. Now, what that does is it creates an extremely strong panel or cell, because we do them in complete units. And it's also not only the strength, but lightweight. So it's really important that we keep the weight down. As Aaron said, vehicles, we have to meet Australian standards and world standards for GVM. And so therefore, everything and anything that goes onto our vehicles is weighed. We use lots of aluminium and lots of composites. In doing that, we are a very heavily based R&D company. Everything we do is how to build a better mousetrap, I guess. We look at everything and say, well, we could do that better, or we can do that. A lot of times we're just doing it by ourselves and people are copying us, which I guess most people say that's nice, but it is hard work when you're out the
frustrating,
front. Yeah, it is. You're at the top end of the pile and you're trying to stay there, and you've got people, nipping at all these things. And I don't spend enough time, I guess, seeing what everybody else is doing. We're just too busy doing our own stuff. We don't do the same quantity that Aaron does. We do about 10 to 16 vehicles a year. Our pricing sits between 500 and 1.2 million a vehicle, and we build on platforms such as Iveco, which I don't think the US has Iveco, Unimog, which is a Mercedes product, G Pro, which is a Mercedes product, Toyota Land Cruiser, which I'm sure you guys know, and then the Fuso is another vehicle. And we're looking at a couple of other platforms right now. And from what we've experienced is we started off with a very, I suppose, tight envelope of what we were building, still very customizable, but we have seen that we've had to even more and more customize, where Aaron's pulled his into a maybe more scalable build. We've had to actually go the other way to maintain sales. And also it's the way we want to go. And if you want to keep attracting the right people, and I mean, it is hard to keep good engineers and good production guys. And pretty much everybody on our site is either qualified as a tradesperson or an engineer or of sorts. We don't have production guys, just assembly people. Everybody has a trade. Everybody is either training to have a trade or engineering based. So to keep those guys focused and wanting to stay and come to work every day, you've always got to be attacking the hill. You've always got to be trying to find that new barrier to break. And our systems, every part of our vehicle has specific systems that various people in the organization are looking after. So our electrical system, they're looking at that and making sure it is the best in the world, or world class, let's say. Our composites, the same thing, suspension systems. And we work with some great people outside of the business as well, like Bilstein for our suspension. And because our vehicles are manufactured to be put inside containers and shipped all over the world, because that's how customers buy them in Australia, and then they would put them in a container and go anywhere in the world. Pre-COVID, we had 30% of our market traveling the world. COVID brought them all back, and I think we've probably got maybe 10% of back on the track. It's really hurt not necessarily our production side of our business, but our community side of our business. Our community side of our business is huge. We have some very active customers that really push home the family, the community family. And when I say that, it's not to do with your own family, it's to do with involving themselves with like-minded people. Our customers are extremely, I wouldn't say anti-caravan park, but especially in Australia, we have so many places you can go, just like the US. But they are very much looking to disconnect, to camp remote. I think you guys call it boondocking, I think over there, is that right?
Yeah.
Where you do not basically disconnect off grid, no campgrounds. And that's what's really nice about our product, is that they can just drive until they're ready. They find a nice place to stay and they just stop. In saying that, everything in Australia is owned by somebody, even if it's the Commonwealth, they're owned. But going back to the actual vehicle itself, so we start off with a cab chassis. I think Aaron said he's building on vans, so he's fitting out internal vans. We actually build from a cab chassis to a module, and then we wire and suspension. We also manufacture chassis as well. So in other words, we get a cab chassis, we cut it, we extend it, we put a 6x6 under it, and we then manufacture the whole process. And that also requires all of the infrastructure to create a vehicle of that magnitude, because it's huge when you're actually building the entire vehicle. Our paperwork, our systems to be able to have a customer that has a fault somewhere in Australia, and it's not like the US or Canada where you can just, it's probably more like Canada, where these guys are 5,000 kilometers from the nearest help, and it's hard. So Elon, thank you, has created Starlink, which has made our job a lot easier.
I have one sitting over here. I just bought one, a mini, to go to Asia with.
We install them all the time. So we actually have modules. I'm up to our 25th incarnation of Starlink, because Elon keeps bringing out a new one, and we're just using the new mini now, which is 12 volt. Thank you, Elon, for that.
It's so small,
it's unbelievable. But what that's done for us is our customers will, and I say remote, we're not talking about, caravan park to caravan park or fuel station to fuel station. We're talking about our customers are creating or adventuring to no return points. In other words, they are calculating their fuel like an aeroplane. In other words, they know how far they can go before, if there's a problem, they're going to come back.
Point of no return,
It's a lot more intense than the normal RV, let's say. And in that, when they do break down in one of those parts, we've had to do air rescues, medical evacuations. We've had to fly mechanics in with helicopters. We're their team on the ground. So no matter what happens to that customer, we always encourage them to CC us in the problem. And even if they've got it in hand, if they at least let us know, we can maybe help as well. We have a team of people that are ready to help them. Getting a pill box of, heart medicine out to someone in the desert because they've either run out, lost it, can't find it, whatever. That's what we do. And that can be anything from a clutch to a box of pills.
That would be a good YouTube show. Eleanore, you should consider this. Can you imagine Eleanore just flying in on a chopper and rappelling down into the dealership that needs help?
Well, I can tell you the last time we did it, we had no. Okay, so a gentleman's blown his clutch in the middle of the Simpson Desert. It's one of the more, it's becoming less harsh now, but it is a very harsh environment, and our trucks are always out there. So there's 10 of our trucks out there. He's blown a clutch. He's got medical issues. We need to get him out of there. And the quickest, we couldn't tow the truck out. It's too heavy across 1,100 dunes. It's just not possible. So we could get some mechanics out of Tasmania. So if you understand that, that's about 3,000 kilometers away from the Simpson Desert. So we flew the mechanics from Tasmania up to Alice. We had clutch kits up there waiting. They got in a helicopter, and from Alice, they flew out to the Simpson with the clutch kit. They couldn't find 10 trucks. Even though they were in radio contact, they couldn't find them. The helicopter was running out of fuel. They found 3 Land Cruisers with 1 person in each Land Cruiser, which meant, and they're only 2-seaters. The 2 guys out of the helicopter get out and say to the Land Cruiser, look, we know they're around somewhere. We're going to stay because the guy's in trouble, whatever. They get into the Land Cruiser. The helicopter flies away. Then the Land Cruisers spend the rest of the night trying to find the 10 trucks. They find the 10 trucks, change the clutch, and they all get out. So they're the kind of things that we're involved in. It's sometimes it sounds fun, but until Elon came along, we were doing this through radio relay. We were doing it through sat phones, which were pretty much useless, and $12 a minute each way was just ridiculous, especially with the condition that the signal or the communication was so poor on these things, and you're paying ridiculous prices. It's terrible. And so when we would get a phone call on a Wednesday, we knew that we were going to be doing radio work and satellite phones for maybe 5 days to get someone out. Now with Elon, it's like, yep, no worries. You're online 24 hours a day. It's all very easy. And we can basically hand the problem back to the customer in that here's the solution. We've organized all of this. Now you take over and let us know if there's a problem, because they're not doing anything and they're quite capable, very practical people, but they just don't have the means. So we set it all up, and then they might be getting a clutch out of South Australia or somewhere in the world, and they can handle it from there. And that takes a lot of the emphasis off us, even though we still do the whole plan for them. We get them out of that problem. So that's a big part of our business. That's a bit of that's the business part we can't sell. It's very hard to tell that story, except if you're in a format like this where you can tell it. But trying to advertise the fact that we are with you through every up and down.
I gave it to you, man. You're the new Bear Grylls.
Yeah,
You need a show.
We do this a lot. So it's an interesting part of our business. But anyway, and that gives us a problem globally as well. We have people in Mongolia and Germany and Italy and through South Africa that have the same sort of problems, and we've got to deal with it. And I say to them, it doesn't matter how competent your family is. When I've got 4 or 5 guys on the phones and computers with access to every part that we can get, it's always better to ring us. And we don't charge for that. It's just part of owning one of the Earth Cruisers. If you own an Earth Cruiser, you get access to us. And that means that we keep you going as best you can. So, that's what we do anyway.
Awesome. I mean, I want to talk about it in a second about the crossover with all of you, right, between the boating industry for Andrea and RVs. But the first thing I have is just for you, and I'm actually going to go get the Starlink. I want people to see how small this thing is. But for you specifically, when you talked about breaking new barriers with the things that you build, how does this process go? Because it fascinates me. There's so many different things you could do, so many different directions you could take, and obviously you have consumer studies and what people want and where technology is going that can inform your decision. But I assume this is much more complex than just typing like I would into AI and saying, what can I do better, right?
Well, I guess one of the problems is you can make a big mistake lots of times if you're not careful, and I have done that. You go down a path which looks great, feels great, works great, and the customer doesn't want it. That happens. I'm sure every business goes through that. I think the main thing is that we are customer driven. We'll have a customer say to us, I want this, and then we go through and run it to its end. So we design it, we manufacture it, we test it, we fit it, and then we are lucky enough to have a group of customers that love being guinea pigs. Even if they're a new customer, I'll say to them, they'll say to me, can you do this? And I'll say yes, but you're the guinea pig, and they're fine with it. And that means they're going to bear some of the financial load, they're going to bear the frustration, all of that, but knowing full well we're on the job as well. So it is important that they are aware they're going to be that guinea pig. But as Australians, they are very high tech. I won't say high tech. They're very good on the tech take up. They love to take the tech on board. We noticed that with a sister company, we have a relationship with Earth Cruiser in the US, and they seem to be less likely to take tech up. I mean, we use the most advanced battery system in the world. We are using a Garmin control system with hundreds and hundreds of switches, where if you look at some of the more normal motorhomes, they just have banks of switches. All of ours are on a remote, or like an iPad, that sort of size, and you can take it outside the vehicle. We have 3 of them on board every truck. So we have one in the back and one in the front, and you can take it out at night, sit by the fire, and put your truck up and down, and turn it off, turn it on, do everything remotely with that Garmin interface. And that's something that I don't see. You see it in boats all the time. Boats are very advanced with that sort of stuff, and I guess that's where we align ourselves more with. I'm from the boating industry. I'm a marine mechanic by trade. That was one of my first trades. But I see that as we are much more aligned with boating than we are with motorhomes. Motorhomes to us are very backward. They're very old hat, which is fine. That's just how they do it. But our stuff is far more aligned. But even the construction is more boat aligned.
I'd love to jump in on that, because I think that even in our position within the RV world, I think I would argue that we're more RV adjacent than really RVs. We're more overlanding, even though we're, we fall under the RVIA and all of, that's our cert board. But our best materials come out of the boating industry, and that's the level of electronics and the level of engagement that we put in, technology that we put in, is generally from the boating world as well. 12-volt air conditioners, which are not RV standard still, but we on all of van world we embrace that, the efficiency, the lightweight, and the reliability, so that I can, we compare ourselves a lot to the boating world. It's interesting, like that it goes more than on the build side in terms of componentry. It's also on the sales side. Mark, you're obviously dealing with this full custom. People come to you and you say yes, which, I mean, as an engineer, I love that, right? I'm always the one who says yes, and I rely on my staff to fact check me and say no to things, because with our volume, the level of service required to maintain that and to put those new systems in is a little bit unsustainable at our level. But I was going to ask, how do you, when you have a customer, are you in the advisory role? I feel like that's where we, as our sales process has evolved over the last couple of years, we just become RV advisors or overlanding advisors, because people come to us with everything that they've seen on the internet. Like, oh, I really want, the Starlink is a great example. People started coming to us with that. And initially we're like, well, we can do that. But again, like your answer, you're the guinea pig. Now, though, we have it is part of our system, right? It's an option on our 2025 models. But, because we can't make every customer a guinea pig, and there are so many things like that, Starlink's got enough of a system behind it to actually come around. But there are a lot of other things that are much smaller, and they don't have that support network, and they seem like a great idea, but they don't ultimately work out. And I can't have a set of those systems out in the field. So we tend to advise people away. And as an engineer who loves high-tech things and loves the best thing or the most optimal solution, it's kind of frustrating sometimes to turn people away from a potentially good solution. But until it's proven, it's not really worth anything in our side of the industry. And I'm sure you do some of that as well. People come with all kinds of ideas, and you're like, no, we've tried that. Don't do it.
Yeah, we have. Oh, that's all the time, where someone will come to us with their greatest idea, and you say, that's not going to work. And look, I too love, pushing that limit. But unfortunately, you will get customers that come here and they'll say, I've got the best idea in the world. And you have to say to them, that's going to look really good, but someone down the road is going to build it, because we're not. Because that's the problem, is you've really got to have that recipe. And whilst I say we are super customizable, exactly what you said is like Starlink. Obviously, it came out and it was you're the guinea pig, blah, blah, blah. And we have had a lot of problems with the Starlink interface because of the wiring and, just that sort of stuff. But the Starlink product is brilliant, and that's why I like 12 volt. But anyway, as parts become tested, then they become an option, and then the customer orders it. But you do have to be that advisor to everybody. And some of them are looking for a guidance, but I think most of our customers are pretty well researched. They've followed us for a long time. They're spending a lot of money. They're extremely practical. Nobody buying an Earth Cruiser really doesn't have a clue. They're all pretty astute people. They're trying to keep the grey matter going. I think part of buying an Earth Cruiser is there's a lot of planning involved with these the trips they're doing. That, as I said, they're not just traveling up the coast between petrol stations. They're actually traveling to no return points. So therefore, that requires to keep this going. So I think the reason someone buys an Earth Cruiser is that they've got 15 years left of agility. They are overland vehicles, full remote overland vehicles, and they buy it for that reason. But in saying that, we have the age. You're probably not in that boat maybe where we've got the grey nomads sort of syndrome where we do get the older person. So we've had to build systems like our big tires at the back that come down. I mean, our Unimog tires weigh 125 kilos. You can't lift that. I can't lift that. 2 people can't lift that. And 2 people at 70 years old definitely can't lift that. So we've had to innovate systems where winches allow them to come all the way down. We have systems of how to actually tip a wheel and change a 125 kilo wheel by yourself, which we can do quite successfully. But that comes out of need. It comes out of the market that we're in. I mean, I suppose if you had 40-year-old guys that were really built, maybe they could do it in a much more manual way, but we can't. And everything on our trucks is sort of push button. And it's not because we want to be the glamour truck on the market. It's simply because we have that maturity in our customers, and they need it more than anything. And that's also then led itself to people going, well, it's got all this, I want it. So you get the people that just have the money that want to buy it too. But it was always brought out by a need of customers wanting it. That's how we came about. But so often we are advising customers how to do so. And the other thing we have is, you talked about, I suppose, how do we integrate that customer into an overland vehicle? So not only do we advise them, but then because we have such a strong community, we always set them up so they can go away on a trip. We don't organize any of the trips. Our community does that. So therefore, they're in very good hands. When we send them on a trip with other earth cruisers, the motto is leave no man behind or something like that. I don't know what they call it, but it's a really important thing because they've got to feel like they're not stupid. They've got to, because these guys are doing 40 and 50 trips in their lifetime across, say, the Simpson Desert or the Great Central Desert or whatever they're doing, or they've traveled around the world. And you get a newbie who's never even driven a 4-wheel drive before. How do you integrate them into a 7-ton truck and show them how to drive across 1,100 dunes with fuel restraints and water restraints, and you're at -4 degrees overnight and you're 40 degrees during the day? And, obviously our vehicles maintain those systems great. There's also that interface with the customer. And so our community then takes over and shows them how to use all the systems and to use the truck. And I think that is probably something that's maybe different. I'm not sure with you guys. The other question you brought up is not only we've made a conscious decision not to expand into 100 units a year. And the fact that we still only do 12 to 16 units a year is simply because I don't want to stretch that line between me and the customer. I really want to have that one-on-one. I've had much bigger businesses before, 400 staff and tens of thousands of customers. That's not me. You end up sitting in an office doing paperwork. I want to be on the floor with my hands. I'm a tradie by design, I guess, but I'm also an engineer. And also, that's important to me. And that's important to me to talk to the customer and go, okay, this is what you want and this is what we can give you. And me being that conduit, I guess. And that means that scalability is a problem for us, is because I'm the funnel, I'm the reducer in the whole equation. But I like it that way, and I think our customers like it that way.
Hey, this is great, Mark. I'd love to talk to you all day about your composites and stuff.
But I do want to go ahead with your thought, but I want to get to the boating thing and talk about that for a minute. So go ahead.
Yeah. And the only thing, I'm going to pose a question to Eleanor, and you can answer it whenever, but what is your thought on Mark and I think are in lucky situations where our target market is, they still have the money. And so we've both been able to continue to maintain sales at some reasonable level, keep the companies moving forward.
It's tough.
I get it. No, there's touch and go days. Eleanor, would you have a sense? You don't have to answer this right now. We can go back to boats a little bit, but I want to know what you thought on how's this going to ramp out? I mean, RVs and outdoor in general. I'm a big motorcyclist, and I see the KTM's down almost 50% year over year, and they're the biggest, off-road motorcycle manufacturer around right now. And I don't know, it's a little like gut checking, just being in the outdoor industry right now. And I don't know what your feelings on how this is going to come out.
Yeah, I think you've got, obviously with the current conditions in our economy and, Canada US, probably Australia as well. The people that are buying high-end product are still buying higher end product.
Yeah.
When I look at our stats from statistical surveys, the only segment of the market that's up right now are fifth wheels. So, fifth wheels have a price point or start at a price point, right? They're not your entry level product. So I think those and probably the types of products that you're both selling are, like you said, people who do have some money, who have had some research, who are familiar with the industry. We're seeing less impact on that segment. What we're finding right now is it's the younger families, right? People who would have bought product, travel trailer. First of all, product has become more expensive than it was previously. I mean, it's coming down a little bit again, but there was product, price creep has gone up, and interest rates obviously were up. Now, unfortunately, in Canada, we've had a couple price drop, kind of point drops. I think there'll be a couple more. So I think until the economy, gets a little bit stronger, consumer confidence gets a little bit stronger, it's that entry level family product that is going to probably suffer the most. Having said that, we have our Go RV in Canada campaign, our marketing campaign. I mean, they're getting, really strong traffic on their websites. They continue to get millions of viewers. And, people are now wanting to use their RVs in so many different ways, right? It's not just going camping anymore. It's maybe going to a campground and going boating, or maybe going off-roading. We have a lot more young adventurers who are going, we're in BC, so rock climbing and exploring the north. And so they're using their product in many different ways instead of just camping. So I think in the long run, I said this at the beginning, our demographic studies show that we have lots of people still that are outdoor enthusiasts and really interested in the outdoor lifestyle. But whether new unit sales right now, I think they'll still be a little bit soft for the next little while. But I definitely think, and then some of those niche products are doing quite well because, like you say, to Mark's product, it's, I'd love to take one of those out. I mean, I'd love to go to Australia. It seems like such a great adventure. And you have those people that are so focused and driven that that's exactly what they want to do. So if you're able to engage that consumer and build your community, I think you'll do quite well.
Are you looking for guest rescuers, Mark? Or
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to come over. I'd be interested from Andrea about the boating industry, how your sales.
I want to transition to this for a minute, and I do have that. Look at this thing. That's the Starlink Mini. That's for people who have never seen it. That's going in my backpack on a plane. That's the stuff, and that works on RVs and boats, right? So let's use that as a transition.
Also, Brian, you might mention that. Just hold that back up again. The difference between what he's got there is that's everything. The router and everything is in that, and all you do is plug 12 volts into it. See, before that, you had a much bigger dish, and it moved to start with. They had the moving dish, which didn't really work for us. We have to cut it all off. But that one there actually allows you just to plug in 12 volts, and it works. As advertised.
Game changer.
Thank you, Eleanore.
This is 150 megs down in YouTube. I haven't set it up yet. I just got it. It's 150 megs down, and anywhere in the middle of nowhere.
We're already using them. We're already fitting them. They're fantastic. Yeah, unbelievable stuff. Really good.
So talk to us about the boating industry and RV crossover. I want to hear, Andrea, from you first, because we kind of haven't got a chance to get back to you yet in a few minutes. But just talk a little bit about how you view kind of the crossover. Yes, a little bit with RVs, but just how everything kind of relates in the outdoor industry and funnels business. And then Eleanore, I want to hear from you too and your thoughts on that. And then obviously if you gentlemen want.
Well, I guess I can kind of speak from the recreational boater. Obviously, we don't represent the industry. So we're the organization that just focuses on the boater. By the way, there's a great organization in the Northwest called NMTA, Northwest Marine Trade Association. They might be somebody you guys want to talk to about, it's almost, what you guys are talking about with your industry on the RV side. They're kind of dealing with on the maritime side. But I don't know, I've heard, as I was listening to you guys talk about, the thing that popped into my mind was more the services that a recreational boater needs, as you guys were aligning to the services that RVers need, whether they're going to go campground to campground or marine park to marine park, or really get out there like we love to do in British Columbia, right? Up in the Broughtons, Desolation Sound to some extent, and further up than that. So what services do boaters need So to me, there's like a little bit of a crossover there. We have things on our boat that need to be filled and emptied. And I think you guys have the same in RVs, right? You're looking for water. Maybe you can make your own. Maybe you have to go get that from someplace. You have black water waste on your boat that needs to be disposed of. There are very different rules between Canada and the United States. So, in Washington, it's a no discharge zone, meaning you cannot dump your waste in the water. You must go to a facility, or a mobile facility must come to you. And those are things that RBAW is really advocating for. So when the Department of Ecology changed the rules, right or wrong, whatever your opinion is, we have to make sure that when those big changes occur, recreational boating is a $9 billion annual industry in the state of Washington. There's a lot of money and jobs in our state that come from recreational boating. So we want to make sure that the services are there to kind of keep that industry going. So the black water side of it is something that we really advocate strongly for, to make sure there are places that boaters, even paddle boarders or kayakers, because most boaters have an electric bike, to some extent, a paddle board or a kayak on their vessel. So they can, go to a place and get offshore and either do exercise or get to a town and reprovision, that kind of thing. So those for me, I guess, and I don't know if exactly that's where you're going from crossover, but I see those things as being similar to both of our industries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have an answer that I was expecting, right? But I think there's a natural inclination to assume that, like we're dealing with, like we do, one of my other company is Insider Perks. We do marketing for 500 campgrounds, RV resorts, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we're talking to them about is, well, let's write some blog content about things that relate to the outdoor industry, about fishing and lakes and hiking and nature, because those people who are, valuable content, but those people who will read that content are probably more likely to want to then be able to transition to glamping or cabin rentals or RVing or things like that, than the writing about the museum downtown or the 5-star luxury restaurant or things like that, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of where I think I was, I think a lot of it complements each other. Would you agree with that, Eleanore? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of, back to what Andrea said about services and servicing. I mean, I think those are two key things. And I liked, when Mark said they have full service. I mean, they parachute people in, well, maybe not parachute, but helicopter them in and really take care, probably parachute if they had to, really take care of the customer, because that's where we find is that, people will purchase the unit, but they, first of all, they're going to need servicing at some point in time. So we need to make sure that they have access to that in whatever manner works for them, where they're going to use their product, but also have the services available. And, similar to Andrea's point, I think at the beginning about, fewer marine parks, fewer marinas. I mean, we are seeing that as an issue in the RV industry in terms of campgrounds being either purchased. There's been consolidation, business models have been changing. And so just to ensure that consumers have access and, advocating for us, it's for our national parks to ensure that when, and I love what you did there, Andrea, in terms of the tax dollars, but when campers are in the national parks camping, that revenue goes back into the infrastructure of campgrounds, whether it be to make the sites bigger, but just to ensure electrification, water, access to that, because instead of just going into overall revenues, because without those services and those facilities in place, I mean, consumers are going to have a not a great experience, and then are going to leave the industry. And whether they leave the industry of RVing or even just outdoor industry in general, right? Because they feel it's going to be easier to go to the luxury resort or downtown Toronto or something like that. So we really need to ensure that regardless of what they're doing and whatever leisure activity that they are in the outdoor hospitality space, I think that they have a positive experience.
Am I allowed to give you a different take on that, or maybe?
No, you're not allowed, Mark. You're no, I'm kidding.
So just we need all of those services: fuel, discharge stations, and all of that. But in Australia, we have extremely remote towns, and we call them. Sometimes they're called, government towns, whatever. Where there's no jobs, there's no nothing. So basically, the government pays for people to live there. But in getting to these towns, we have and I don't know what you have in the US, if it's the same problem, is that we have towns, and they'll have signs up that say RV friendly town. Now, what that means is that they don't mind you staying in and around town, and they don't mind you parking in the main street, which could be one street. And we're now finding that it is really taking hold. In other words, that the RVs that those towns that don't want them there, they just won't stop. And we always encourage, because we can get our trucks all packed up with everything, food and ice creams and everything they want, and just drive. And they don't have to see anyone for 3 weeks. What we encourage our customers and our users is to stop in those towns, have a cup of coffee, put a bit of fuel in the vehicle, buy an ice cream, whatever it is. What's happening though in these towns is they do have those services, but because they're not RV friendly, the people are just driving straight through them. And I see that being a big change in Australia. And I'm not sure what you guys do in the US for that sort of thing, but yes, all of these little towns have to have the discharge, and they have to have the fuel. We even have in these towns where you've got to pay money to get fresh water because there's no water. So it's filtered on site right there as you put the money in. If you want to get 300 liters of water, you've got to pay for that water to come out of the tap. It's not something you can just turn a tap and it comes out. It's coming out of bore water, it's being refined, and it's for your drinking. But that's the difference in the services that you were talking about, Andrea and Eleanore. It's quite different here.
I don't have a scientific study to back me up, but I'm pretty sure there's only about 3 places in the U.S. without a Walmart within 5 minutes. So different in Canada, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating. So we're a little bit over. I want to make sure everybody, if you have to go, well, I'm blurry again. If you have to go, feel free to hop off. But I just want to wrap it up real quick. Give everybody a chance for final thoughts here. Mark, you want to go first? Just tell us, where can they find out more about your product, your services, stuff like that.
So obviously we're in Australia, quite different. Although we do have a lot of American customers where they own trucks in Australia and they fly over for 3 to 6 months a year and use their trucks. We're manufacturers in Australia. earthcruiser.net.au. Happy to talk to anyone that's interested in that sort of lifestyle. But thanks for having us on.
Thanks for being here, Mark. I appreciate it. Andrea?
Hi, our information is at RBAW.org for folks in the state of Washington that are focused and want to help us, with our member-supported organization. Our individual memberships are a whopping $20 a year. We also have organization and contributing businesses that are invested in the recreational boater that support us. And the last thing I wanted to throw in that I didn't get to mention earlier is a few years ago, we started a 501c3, so a nonprofit organization called the Marine Parks Conservancy that we mirrored off of BC Parks Forever. We have a good ties with them. And so when we see marinas that are derelict or they're going to go out of business, we try to work with our members and the state to buy them, fix them up and turn them into marine parks that we can donate back to the state. So there's a little bit about that on our website as well. Again, to try to give more services to this business that we think is the lifestyle that we love. And it sounds like you guys think of that similarly for RVs as well.
I'll eventually buy a boat. I've got to have enough money, though. Maybe Eleanore will advertise with me one day. Eleanore, wrap it up. Tell us where they can find out more about RVDA of Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, RVDA is www.RVDA.ca. It's mostly for members in an industry association. And then if there are consumers out there that want to find dealers in Canada, they can go to the RVDA.ca website as well, just to find information about places to go RVing and camp.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here, Eleanore. Aaron, last but not least.
Yeah. Offhighwayvan.com, and again, manufacturing Class B RVs in Salt Lake City, Utah. On the advocacy side, I think it's interesting. One of our initiatives, and it's a little self-serving because social media is everything nowadays. We have building our own community out there, and our sales team and our customer service team. It kind of fits with what you're talking about, Mark. We have our own list of recommended places. Most of our customers are from all over the U.S. and even outside of the U.S. And when they come to either pick up their van and do a road trip in the American West, we provide some road mapping for them to say, hey, here's some great places to go see, and it helps to generate that community. And I think it is an important part. It's some of our people are like yours, probably trying to just get away from everyone, but also they're trying to build a community of people that they know and like and that they can relate to. So we do a little bit of that. But it's interesting to chat with you guys, and thanks for your time today. It's been nice talking to you, Brian. Thanks for setting it up.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and I appreciate it. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. I will not be here the next 2 weeks, so you're going to have a guest host next week, which is going to be Mark Kep, and then after that's going to be Greg Emmert. I'm going to be in Asia on a business trip. And so it's hard, Eleanore. Okay, my life is very rough. But thank you all for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next week for another episode, and see you guys later. Take care. Have a good week.
Thanks.
Thank you. See ya.
This episode of MC Fireside Chats with your host, Brian Searl. Have a suggestion for a show idea? Want your campground or company in a future episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Get your daily dose of news from moderncampground.com. And be sure to join us next week for more insights into the fascinating world of outdoor hospitality.